So we've gotten through the first week and some change of training camp. We've had some padded practices. We had some stadium practices. We've had a decent amount of time with the 2021 Browns before they head into the preseason. But one question looms. That question is what's ultimately going to be answered at the end of the preseason when they do all these cuts is who's on the bubble? And like in many camps, the answer to that question fluctuates on a week-to-week basis. So who is on the bubble right now? That's an interesting question. We're going to get to it. But before I do, I want to make sure I give a shout out to the patreon.com dog check tier members. I'm going to start with Michael Matique, Nick Merrick, Mike Lapa, Wesson Megan, Tyler Chiz, D.A. Jade, Easley Bash, Joe Hart, Gabriel Wilson, Fred Pratt III, David Valtiar, Relentless Buck, Chunt, Rex Kaufman, Kevin Johnson, DJ Marino V, Edward Carpenter, Matt H, Sign Sheets, Gemini, Liam Freeman, Fight Dirty 74, Yo, Matt Lloyd, Paul Wilcox, Hundo Magnifico, Kyle Stuffer, Lukey from Munich, Deveroff, J Guy 101, Musty Taco, Joe Bobby, Brad Cabo, Dylan W, James McGinley, Arenda Hall, Chad Gimme, David Maldonado, Dylan Hell, Josh Mendorch, Jaleel Salim Jr., Mark M, TJ Showman, Stuart Moore, Cleveland BCI, Robert Jermaine Jr., Dave, Mike May, Andrew Hirsch, Curtis Byer, Batman, Bharat Kumar, John Albert, Beerman069, Masayua Buzzer, Roland James, Nemo, Mac House, Reeve Hertz, Philip Wilcox, Marie Vivert, Sean Barron, Goggles Pisano, Corporal Nick Lopez, Dom Gazzulo, Nick Nasty, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216 Christian, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Billy Moose Gentry, Austin Z, Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, Dog Pound, Kai Greg Ehlers, Austin Bowling, Lydia Mahawk, Jesus Serrano, Chris Foams, the Picktown Browns backers, Max Neelakenko, Mark Khan, Max Al Dojo, and Water Bear Marketing. Again, guys, thank you so much for the support. Just hearing your names on that crawl every time just brings my heart with joy. I really do appreciate the support that you guys have showed me, the really strong support you guys have showed me on Patreon. I cannot emphasize enough how much I appreciate your support, and that's why I always shout you guys out. But now let's get into the video. All right, so the bubble, it's a ever-evolving list of guys who are jumping in and out of this bubble. These guys who are close to being cut, then all of a sudden they have solid roster spots. And what I'm going to do before I get into the guys who are on the bubble, I want to talk about guys who I think have worked themselves, at least so far in practice, off the bubble. And the first guy is obviously Mack Wilson. This dude was on the bubble to the point to where it could have been possible he was cut before camp even started. Like, he was that deep on the bubble, in my opinion. Like, he had a terrible year last year. He got DNPs, healthy DNPs, when the linebacking room was not super deep last year. In lieu, you know, they were putting out Jacob Phillips out there instead of him a lot of the times. It wasn't looking bright for Mack Wilson coming into the season, but he changed his body. And again, I have seen players change their body and nothing changed on the football field, right? Barkevious Mingo is one of the biggest examples of that, right? Everybody was fixated on his body. He changed it, came to camp, still Barkevious Mingo. But Mack Wilson's a different story, man. He came to camp, different body, looks like a different player. Looks really good. Looks like he's going to challenge for playing time. And, you know, looks like he's going to challenge a couple guys' roster spots because of how athletic he is. And he has that extra size that makes him a little bit more versatile to put him in some rundowns because he's big enough and strong enough to kind of hold his own in those situations. So now when you look at Mack Wilson with the context that he's practicing much better and that he looks like the guy that we thought he would have been developed into by this point in his career, now you look at him with fresh eyes and you can see all the positives with him, and you can see how he fits into this defense and how he can add to that linebacking room depth. And you can definitely see a spot for him on this roster despite him not being a coveted draft pick of this organization, well, not organization, but this regime in Cleveland currently. So now you can make the case for Mack Wilson not just making the team, but getting playing time this year, which before camp started, I would have said was a little unrealistic. He really worked hard, and it looks like it's paying off. Now, it has to translate in the preseason game. It has to continue into these joint practices and throughout camp in order for him to stay off the bubble because, again, he is a prime bubble candidate before we walked into this training camp. So he's going to have to maintain this level of play the entire camp. But if he does, he will make the team, and he'll have playing time, which is a giant difference to what we thought he was going to get coming into it. So hats off to Mack Wilson there. Dearness Johnson and Demetric Felton are two players I feel like have also kind of worked themselves off the bubble. And this is because coming into camp, it was either Dearness or Demetric. But Demetric has showed enough as a slot receiver, and he showed enough as a runner to make him very valuable to this team and to carve out a niche for him, to the point to where I think the Browns coaching staff is desperate to find a quote-unquote excuse to keep 4 running backs because they can justify it by maybe keeping one less wide receiver. And you can tell that the coaching staff is eager to find a way to kind of sneak him onto the roster. That being said, with Demetric Felton, man, it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of keep him on and who that takes off, because I don't think it's going to be Dearness Johnson because he's such a more polished and better runner now this camp than he was last camp, and he's such a better runner than the other running backs in this competition. Like, there are other guys who flash, like a John Kelly every once in a while. Demetric Felton even flashes, but Dearness is a lot more consistent. He's game tested at this point. He's played NFL games behind this offensive line in this scheme. And you know, if one of the two goes down, Chubb or Hunt, you want to have a capable backup in there. And you know, Dearness is more than capable of being that guy. And the other guy I think is off the bubble just because he wasn't drafted is Marvin Wilson. You know, for an undrafted guy, it's always a battle to make the team. But now he's getting second team reps consistently. That's a good thing for Marvin Wilson. I think he's going to make the team this year. I think he's going to be somebody to watch during the preseason games. He's had an excellent camp so far. Hope he continues because he is a intriguing prospect for a guy who's undrafted. Now let's talk about the bubble guys. First guy I got to go with here is Tony Fields. Ironically, just can't get on the field, right? That's why he's on this list, because if Mack Wilson stays, somebody has to go. Now, you can make the argument that it could be Malcolm Smith. And I could see that argument, right, with Malcolm Smith, that you might have to let him go because his skill set might be redundant if Mack Wilson is ready to go at the end of camp. And I can see that argument there. But one thing going against it, and multiple things actually going against it, is one, Malcolm Smith is a pretty sure thing. There's a coverage, you know, secondary linebacker. And Mack Wilson has been erratic his entire career when it comes to his consistency. You know, it would almost be like giving away lifeboats when you're riding on the Titanic. Like, it may or may not sink, but you'll feel a lot better if you had that lifeboat on the roster. It's kind of what Malcolm Smith is. So I don't think they go that direction. Tony Fields, on the other hand, look, he can't get on the field. He might continue to be injured. And he's a late round draft pick. So maybe the Browns are thinking we can cut him and get him back onto the practice squad, because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep all of these guys under your control somewhat, right? Because even on the practice squad, you're not really under the team's control, but they can hide you there. So I'm thinking Tony Fields probably going to find his way onto the practice squad, because if Mack Wilson needs a roster spot, they're only keeping 6 linebackers. And I don't think Jacob Phillips is getting cut, who would be the only other candidate. And since that's the case, it's probably going to be Tony Fields. So he's on the bubble at this point. He can't get on the field at this point. JoJo Natson is another one that is just falling by the wayside here when you talk about the bubble, because his one thing is he can return kicks and punts. And Demetric Felton needs to make the team. And Demetric Felton can also return kicks. And you might be able to teach him how to return punts. And if you're going to keep 4 running backs, you better have a use for that 4th running back that's not going to waste a roster spot, and that might come at the expense of JoJo Natson, who, hey, look, he can be a kick returner. He can be a punt returner. He's very fast, but Anthony Schwartz can fill in and do that same thing, and we're pretty sure Anthony Schwartz is going to make the roster. So if Anthony Schwartz is bigger, faster, stronger than JoJo Natson, probably the same level of wide receiver, because they're both not great receivers yet. And you can also fit in Demetric Felton there on some special teams things. What's really the use for JoJo Natson at this point, right? End rounds are going to go to Anthony Schwartz or Odell. It just doesn't make much sense to keep him on the roster. And, you know, he has health issues, right? He doesn't stay on the field quite often. So, again, just prime reason why he's on the bubble. It's unfortunate for JoJo Natson, right? Because he was definitely going to make the team last year. He made the team last year, and then he got hurt very early in the year, and that was a wrap for him. Now he comes back, and Anthony Schwartz is here. Demetric Felton is here. Who, you know, Donovan Peoples-Jones can return kicks and punts if you need him to as well. You got 3 guys on this team who project to be very good players. They're all having better camps than you are right now. And they do, as a secondary feature to everything else they bring, the main thing that you bring, it just doesn't seem like there's a use for him anymore. Kind of like a point and shoot camera when everybody else just has a smartphone that has a good enough camera on it anyways. Like, there's not really the use for him because everybody else on the team that can do what he does can also do other things at a higher level than he can. So again, it's going to be a tough make for him. Jordan Elliott is another guy who's in roster trouble. I'm surprised not a lot of people have talked about this, but Tommy Togiai and Marvin Wilson are taking consistent number 2 snaps, and that's not good for Jordan Elliott. That means he's been usurped by the rookies. And, you know, you can't blame this on him not being an Andrew Berry guy. He was a 3rd-round pick by Andrew Berry just last year. Just hasn't been productive. Did not have a great rookie year. Comes in this year. They literally clear out Sheldon Richardson to make space for him on this rotation, and he can't take it. It's been taken up by an undrafted free agent and a 5th-round pick when he was a 3rd-round pick. So for Jordan Elliott, at this point, it's not looking good for him. I don't know if he gets cut, but man, it's I don't know what you do with him at this point, right? If he can't get into the rotation above Tommy Togiai and above Marvin Wilson, then I don't know what you do with him, right? Like, how do you keep him on the roster? Do you hide him on the practice squad? Can you hide him on the practice squad? I don't know what you do with him at that point because he desperately needs to have a good camp in a good couple of weeks. And if he doesn't, he's in jeopardy for a guy who was drafted last year. Last guy, he's been on the bubble all camp, Sheldrick Redwine. Just a crowded room, right? They brought in Richie LeCount. He looks good. They brought in John Johnson III. He's John Johnson III. He's going to start. You know, Grant Delpit's coming back. Ronnie Harrison's returning. So you got 4 guys in that room. Safeties, especially in the Joe Woods system, just don't come off the field that much. Not really that much of a need for Sheldrick Redwine, and not a good enough coverage guy that you can hide on special teams or put at a nickel or kind of be flexible with him if he's still on your roster. It's been a long time he's been on this roster. We've been waiting for him to develop and blossom. Hasn't happened yet. I don't think it's going to happen with this team. It might happen with another team, but I don't think it's going to happen with the Cleveland Browns. So Sheldrick Redwine, the last guy on the bubble. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Who do you think's on the bubble? And is there somebody I didn't talk about that's on your list? Let me know in the comment section below.